Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root, where we dive deep into understanding and addressing root causes of chronic health issues so you can help and find healing inside and out, now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root. I'm Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice, Trifecta Collective. Welcome to the podcast. So today's topic is, what really is healing? What does it mean to be on a healing journey, to be, we can say, like, quote unquote, healed? What does this look like? What does it feel like? And I want to share where this idea came from. And then I want to talk through it here. So last week, by the way, if you don't know, so it's me in the practice. There's me, owner, founder. I'm also a practitioner with a variety of specialties. And I have two other practitioners who work with me, Brendan and Caitlin, two other women who work very closely with me, and we collaborate on just about everything. And one of the common questions we get in the practice is, like, oh, Megan, I'd like to work with you, or I'd like to work with so-and-so. You're always working with all of us. We meet every single week. We chat in between our weekly practitioner meetings, and we do a lot of brainstorming all together. If we have questions, if we are kind of stuck on something, specifically me with a client, I'll throw it to them and just get some of their thoughts. Anytime we're looking at labs or anything for anyone I'm not directly working with, I always lay some eyes on those and help with sharing thoughts and recommendations. Anytime we have a client that gets stuck or we get something that's a little bit new or different, we're always talking about it. So within our practice, you always get three minds, which I think is a massive benefit because we all have different backgrounds. We all, have similar types of education with some different kind of specialties within that. But you're getting all three of us, which I think is awesome. And I know, like, as a practitioner for myself, that's huge. Coming up with protocols and ideas and suggestions and different things like that. We see all kinds of weird, interesting, kind of out of the box things. And so we kind of come at it from a variety of standpoints, from a physical standpoint, from emotional, energetic, all of these things all together, because guess what? Our body is made up of all of these things. And one of the things that I have a really hard time with in both Western medicine and in how many functional health practitioners operate is they see the body as separate things. Like, we have gut health specialists, or we have PCO specialists, or we have brain and emotional mental health specialists. We have cardiologists, we have skin specialists. Like, we have all these specialties. But at the end of the day, we need to really understand our body is not separate. Our systems don't operate separately. We are one. And the physical plays a really big role, like our physical body symptoms, how we move, how we live, our day-to-day, our stress levels, our trauma background, our mental and emotional health. All of these things are so, so, so interconnected that how can we specialize in just one thing? And I get it from a marketing standpoint. Once again, like, as a business owner, as someone who has built, a fairly successful practice here, multiple six figures, multiple years in a row here, like, yeah, I get it. And if you're not looking at all of these things, are you really showing up for your clients the way that they really need? Or are you just handing out restrictive diets and supplement protocols? And that's really all you do. And you can say you specialize because you're trained in a GI map, you're specialized in gut health, but you don't know how the nervous system, how stress impacts digestion, how toxin load impacts digestion, how hormones impact digestion, how the way we think can impact our digestion. Like, all of these things can play such a big role. Constipation. We did
a peeling back the layer episode on constipation. There are so many pieces that go into that, including like liver and bile flow, stress, gut health, gut overgrowth issues, toxin overload issues, upper GI support. Trauma is a really big one when it comes to constipation. So it's like we need to look at all of these things. And so when we were talking about this at one of our last meetings, we were really talking about what is the expectation? What is health? What is healing? What is being quote unquote healed look like? And as we were having this conversation, we were talking, we all follow people on social media in the health and wellness space. And it's like, what is the version of health and healing that's really being sold versus what do we really consider to be healed, to be really healthy? And what does this really look like? What does this look like for ourselves as individuals who have all had a wide variety of health issues, who have had a variety of trauma issues, of decent to quite significant trauma histories that has impacted our health. And we've all done tons of protocols and different things and nervous system regulation and the mental and emotional side. And what does it mean to be healthy? What does it mean to be healed? And I thought it was such a good conversation that, of course, I wanted to talk about it on the podcast. And I really do think, and if I look at, I went back through this, I'm recording on a Monday. So this past weekend, I went back through and was looking at some of the really big people in this space and how they talk about health, how they talk about being healed, and some of the things that, maybe they've gotten into to quote unquote optimize health, to quote unquote advance of their health, which leads us into a lot of the biohacking space. And the number of people that come to us and want to just jump on peptides or just want, a supplement for every little thing that they're dealing with to support everything all at once. They want something to support their mental and emotional health. They want something to support every single nutrient deficiency that pops up, to support all of the gut stuff that comes up, to support, and that is not how we work. We have knowledge and expertise in many of these areas, and yes, we can use peptides here and there. No, they are not something we regularly use within our practice. They can be a tool to use, and they're typically not initial go-to tools that we look at. And so the way we really look at health and healing is, we look at symptoms, we look at health history, and then we look at labs. And sometimes that's just blood work, sometimes that's blood work plus a functional lab test. And we see all the things. But then we zoom out and look at the bigger picture. And instead of supplementing for every little thing, instead of doing an overly restrictive diet that we know, one, is not going to fix anything, these restrictive diets, low FODMAP, low histamine, low oxalate, GAPS, the selective carbohydrate diet, autoimmune paleo, Whole30, these things are not fixing anything for people who, and I'm talking to people who have chronic issues. If you get bloated every once in a while, otherwise you feel pretty good, yeah, sure, go do paleo. You probably won't get bloated very often at all, and much less than you were. But the reality is these things are symptom managers. They can be tools, they can be valuable tools. And if we're only looking at these, I will tell you from personal experience, but also working with well over 1,000 clients at this point, they're not sustainable. The likelihood that someone is going to develop food fears and food anxiety long term is extremely high. And is it worth it? And for us, for most clients, the answer is no. For some clients, yeah, it's absolutely worth it. And we have big conversations before we do this. Like, This is not going to fix all of your symptoms. It will help manage your symptoms while we're focusing on these bigger root causes that are going on. And we look big picture, work our way in. And we have a variety of tools at all these different levels that we use. And these therapeutic or restrictive diets are one of those tools that we can use. Supplements are a tool. Lifestyle shifts are a tool. All of these things are tools. And for us in our practice, our big focus is not only to help someone in a healing journey, which could take anywhere between, let's say, 4 to 18 months, depending on the person and what they're dealing with, but also to give them tools and resources and habits and lifestyle changes that are going to serve them for arguably the rest of their lives. And that's a big thing that makes our practice different. It is not just eat your veggies now, let's focus on some fiber for the next 6 months, and then you can stop eating fiber. It's like, no, fiber is really good for us. Protein is an essential nutrient. Fat is an essential nutrient. Are we getting enough? Are we eating enough calories? Are we eating too many calories? Are we overeating because we don't have tools to help us emotionally regulate and process our emotions? And so the only tool that we really have is eating, binge eating, restrictive eating, going for things that may not be the best nutritionally for us. And what does this look like? And for us, healing isn't just for the next however many months or a year. It's how can we give someone tools and resources that are going to help them in their healing journey right now with their chronic issues that they have. But zooming out, how can we give someone tools and resources that are going to serve them really forever? A higher protein diet, and by that I mean a moderate protein diet, just getting enough protein for someone's body. I mean, that's good forever. That's good advice for a woman especially. Oh my gosh, that's so fundamental and so important long term. Getting enough vegetables, getting your micronutrients in, all of your nutrients to the best of our ability. Great, forever, serving us forever. Continued maintenance from a drainage pathway support work, helping your body naturally process out things that it doesn't want inside of us. Great, forever. Eating in a way that is going to optimize digestion, meaning that we're chewing our food. We're helping our body pre-digest everything before we even swallow our food. Eating as much as we possibly can in a relaxed state. Good for your brain, already stimulates digestive enzymes. We can't digest food when we're in a sympathetic or stressed state. Good for the rest of our lives. Doing some sort of mindfulness activity to help us process emotions, to help us manage stress. Great forever. Sleep hygiene, a morning routine that supports your brain and your hormones and your adrenal health and your thyroid health. Good forever. Movement that is going to support your body and be enough, but also not too much. And that's going to change throughout time, but very supportive for the body forever. So for us, that's what we really think about when it comes to health and healing and this is going to look different, a little bit different for everyone. There are some moral basics, and how we implement these and how we incorporate them into our lives is going to be vastly different. Another big thing that we really try and talk about and emphasize, and I will tell you, we do get resistance on this for sure, is keeping an eye, and this doesn't necessarily mean tracking all your calories, tracking everything you're eating. I'm talking looking at basic patterns that are happening within our bodies and happening especially for women, especially for menstruating women, especially going into perimenopause. How is our body responding during different times of the month? How do we feel when we have our period? What about right after our period? What about an ovulation? What about after ovulation, our luteal phase? What about leading up to the start of our period? And all of these things can mean different things. Breast tenderness, very classic example. Breast tenderness is typically going to come up as a result of real or perceived estrogen dominance. And what I mean by that is real estrogen dominance, meaning our body is producing too much estrogen, and or our estrogen metabolism is not in the best place, meaning that our body's not able to filter out the estrogen it doesn't want out very well. And this comes back to drainage pathway support work. Perceived estrogen dominance. This is so common in perimenopause and with women who are experiencing high levels of stress. Your progesterone starts to drop. Stress goes up, progesterone goes down. It's one of the first things that's going to happen hormonally under high levels of stress. One of the big things our body likes is a good, and once again, there's some variability within this, estrogen to progesterone ratios. And when our estrogen, we can say our estrogen is normal, quote unquote normal or optimal, but our progesterone starts to dip, perceived estrogen dominance. And so many people don't understand, especially a lot of practitioners don't understand this. And we see so many women coming to us with hormonal imbalances that are just blanket put on DIM, D-I-M, which can help with estrogen metabolism. And it can do some harm if someone's estrogen is already low. So if someone's not been tested and they come to us, they might be even further destroying their estrogen levels, which can cause some really big imbalances within the body. This is why we are so careful when it comes to direct hormone support, because a lot of times we don't know until we test. And we also need to look at timing. Women send us blood work all the time for our free consultations. And they're like, I don't know what's going on with my hormones. I'm like, well, I also can't tell you what's going on with your hormones if you don't know what day of your cycle this was taken on. Also, there are better times and worse times to look at certain hormones, depending on where we are in our cycle. We also need to understand that we have to take blood work with a little bit of grain of salt when it comes to hormones, because hormones are a moment in time. Oh, I'm sorry. Blood work is a moment in time. So when we're looking at hormones, we're looking at a moment, which, if you are a woman, you probably already know this. And I know I've talked about this on the podcast before. Our hormones can change moment to moment. There's not too many things that will change moment to moment in our bodies. If we think about like our liver enzymes, not going to change moment to moment. Within a period of time, absolutely. But hormones can absolutely change moment to moment, which is why we will typically prefer to start with something like a Dutch test, which is going to give us many, 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 many hours worth of information. So it's a more comprehensive and better look. Once again, we couple this with blood work, couple this with symptoms and health history. We come up with a pretty darn good idea of what is really going on and what might be supportive. But once again, if we start with hormones, we're missing often the bigger picture. Well, what are all the things that are impacting hormones? What about drainage pathways, estrogen metabolism especially? What about toxin load? What about gut health? What about stress? What about nervous system? My goodness, do hormones respond so quickly in women to stress? So looking at these patterns is so helpful. And if we get 1 month where something's just feeling a little bit weird, often I will tell clients, and some of this is going to depend on the person and what it is, but this might be a fluke. This might be a one-off kind of situation, in which case, let's see what the next month brings. Let's look at, if someone starts to get really irritated, really bad mood, really bad sleep at some point in their cycle, I want to track. When does that start? How many days before someone's period is that starting? Is it right after ovulation? Is it a few days after ovulation? And then we can see that start being pushed back. And then maybe it's like it went from 7 nights to 1 night. Huge, huge, huge bonus when we see that. And so we want to continue to look at these patterns, and looking at these patterns can be tried. And this is patterns for just about everything. I will tell you, I rather spend a week or two tracking someone's nutrition. Once again, this doesn't necessarily mean calories and macros, but even just looking at a food and mood journal. What are they eating? What time are they eating? How do they feel after they eat? How were they eating? Were they eating in their car? Were they eating just like a quick protein bar that they were shoving down their face? Were they trying to chug some water with it? All of these things matter. I rather look at that than a food sensitivity test any day. 100%. I much rather spend a little bit of extra time and effort looking through that than spending almost $400 on a food sensitivity test that, by the way, those food sensitivities could be different in the next 2 weeks. Why not look at these patterns? And so this is one of the big things that we really like to look at, because this is going to tell us so much about someone's body. But also, when someone has the capacity to do this themselves, they may not be able to quite put all of the pieces together if they don't have all of the knowledge and all of the understanding, but they're going to start to see a pattern. In which case we'll have clients follow up with us, clients that we've stopped working with because we've wrapped up their program, and they've started to notice a pattern, and they'll get some labs run. They'll talk to us about the pattern, schedule just a one-off appointment, and we can tell you exactly what is going on. If we want additional testing, if not, like what kind of support might look the most beneficial for them to help with this kind of issue, whatever it may be kind of going on. So all of this is super, super valuable. And once again, this is not saying testing is not valuable. Testing is absolutely valuable, and it is just a piece. Because here's the reality of the situation. At the end of your health and healing journey, are you going to feel 100% of the time? No. And if someone told you that, in my opinion at least, they're lying to you. What you should feel like, in my opinion, in our opinion within our practice, you should feel about 90%, 80 to 90% of the time. Some days you might feel 100%. Sometimes you might feel closer to 60%. Other times you're feeling 90%. Because the reality is, especially as a woman, the reality is our bodies are constantly changing. And I will tell you personally, this is something that took me a long time to really wrap my head around and accept. This is also why I've talked so much the last couple years about tracking your cycle, about knowing and really understanding your hormones. Because as a menstruating female, this is going to, I won't say dictate, but highly influence your life. And I am also not, by the way, totally sold on the cycle syncing, where your workouts are changing every week, your nutrition is changing every week, your things are changing. That feels very overwhelming for me personally. If you fall into that category, cool, 100%. If that feels very validating for you, go for it. I think that's great. For me, it feels very overwhelming and feels very inconsistent, especially from a nutritional and workout perspective. I like my routines, and I don't want to be switching things up every single week. It feels very confusing for my brain to keep track of progress really well when I do that. And I know that in my follicular phase, once my period's over, for me, it's usually starting around day 3, day 4, through day about 15 or 16. That is when I'm going to feel the most energized. My mood's going to be the best. My sleep is going to be the best. And just overall, from a physical standpoint, I'm going to feel my best. I know that about myself. I have tracked this for long enough. And by the way, I communicate all of this to my fiance, Jonathan, as well. Every couple days, he knows where I am because I'm talking about it. I'm communicating with him where I am, how I'm feeling, what is going on emotionally, what is going on physically for my body. And so he understands where I am because his body is totally different. I made this analogy to a client not too long ago, and it just really helped her like put this together. But from like an energetic, emotional standpoint, we call men like the sun because it rises and sets every single day like clockwork. It's going to shift a little bit, but by and large, we're going to see the sun rise every day, the sun's going to set every single day. Women, we're like the moon. And so we have times where we're super, super bright. We think about typically ovulation, and not saying that you're ovulating around the full moon, because most of us, when our cycles are very natural, we're typically going to start our period either near the full moon or near the new moon. So, but sometimes we're really bright, we're energetic. Other times we're dark, we're introspective. We kind of want to keep to ourselves. We're more introverted, different things like that. And then we have everything in between them. And so women are like the moon, where everything's a little bit different every single day, which society's built around the sun and men's health and this 24-hour cycle, which are hormones. Now, we do have some hormones that operate, if you think about cortisol levels, like cortisol levels operate very much like the sun, or they should in theory. But our sex hormones, our progesterone and estrogen specifically, and there are other hormones that are fluctuating throughout the month as well, just FYI. We should see big changes through that. And by the way, some women feel their worst during ovulation and the best while they're on their period. I can't tell you the number of women that I've heard say that, and they're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I go, there's nothing wrong with you. That's just how your body operates. I've seen plenty of women go on HRT, BHRT, go on progesterone first, and have horrible reactions, whereas some women, man, that's a lifesaver for them. Everyone's body is different. And this is why we don't have one size fits all when it comes to just about anything. Typically we start with drainage pathway support work. We think it's really fundamental. If your body's not excreting things out regularly from a day-to-day standpoint and getting things out that it doesn't want, just about nothing else. We're never going to see like big shifts in anything else when it comes to gut, hormones, thyroid, cortisol, cognitive health, like any inflammation, like any of these things. So typically that's going to look similar. But also we have a variety of things and tools that we'll often use when it comes to that. But yeah, that's typically where we're going to start with most of our clients. But there's room and flexibility within that and how we operate, what that looks like, where someone's starting from. Are they starting on one supplement? Are they starting on a couple supplements? Are they just starting with lifestyle things? Like there's so many factors that go into that. Or do we even need to do some prep work before we get into that, which is the case for a lot of our more complex kinds of clients, specifically mold and mast, like really heavy mold and mast cell type clients. So we need to understand that the reality is our body's not going to be the same day to day. As women, our body's not supposed to be the same every day. And that doesn't mean that you should have multiple days every single month where you feel horrible. And that's where things like, PMDD, some women lose so much blood during their period. The periods are so heavy. They're going through multiple pads, tampons, cups, every hour, sometimes more than that. And it causes them to be super fatigued because it's depleting like essentially all of their iron stores. Yeah, there's a reason for that. And so we need to look at that. Also, as women, we need to understand our bodies are going to be more sensitive to stress. That is the reality of our lives and how physiologically how our bodies work. And we get so many women, and I have tried to also be this woman where you're Wonder Woman, you're Superwoman, you're doing all of the things, and you're working full time and you're caring for yourself and trying to lose weight and be super healthy and caring for kids and caring for potentially like a significant other, parents, siblings, friends, trying to do it all, and you can't. Something starts to go. Your health starts to take a turn. We're more sensitive. Our bodies are more sensitive, which, we can view as a negative, or and be really hard on ourselves because of that, or we can start to learn and understand our bodies and understand that, look, the week before your period, you may not feel 100% those days. You might feel anywhere between 70 to 90. That is okay. That is kind of what is supposed to happen based on where our hormones are. And when we go through perimenopause, we get so many women just, is this perimenopause? Is this just how my life is now? And they're going through a nightmare and roller coasters, essentially what feels like every day or almost every day. No, that is not what is supposed to happen. And if you're unwilling to look at some of the pieces of stress in your life, the trauma, the nervous system, the reality is nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements can only go so far. Movement can only go so far. At some point, we really need to take a look at how you're living and how you are managing, regulating stress. Because this is where most women, especially, but we can really blanket statement where most people start to go downhill. And it's never just one event. It is a series of stressors. It is a period of stress. I've tried to be very open, and I actually have another podcast I'm going to record sharing another little update on my own health and wellness. And I have some newer thoughts or some newer things to share just really from the last 6 months. And a lot of it has to do with like relational, coming out of last year, coming out of Jonathan and I in a newer relationship, him getting diagnosed with cancer, us living a whole brand new lifestyle that's new to both of us, him going through cancer treatment, what that did to him, what that did to me, how we were coming out of it. We were both kind of landing, all that kind of stuff. And we've been doing a lot of like very bigger, like a lot of big, deeper work around individually and together around this topic. And I just did some more individual kind of work over this past weekend, and I want to let that process for me just a little bit more before I share some additional information around that. But the reality is stress is gonna happen. And I know I talk about this analogy all the time, but this is the best analogy I've ever come up with. When we're working with someone in their healing journey, big picture, what is our goal? Well, our goal is to obviously help someone not be dealing with these chronic issues on a day-to-day basis, but it's also to take things out of their stress bucket. And it's also, if we can, give them a bigger stress bucket, because the more things we can take out of it, and we can't take everything out. And that's why if we can take out what we can, that can go a long way. But also increasing the size of our bucket also goes a long way. So when inevitably stressful events, stressful periods of time happen, we have room and capacity to handle that without our health tanking and going back to where it was. Because I don't know anyone who has zero stress in their life. There are some people who have lower stress in their life for sure, and some people who are, run pretty high stress on a day-to-day basis. And there's a lot of really simple things we can do. I was just talking with a client who has been working with us a few months, and we were chatting on some of the big differences she's noticed in the first few months and some of the things that we still want to work on. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that she shared with me was, she realized she was rushing through everything in her life. And just taking some more time and space and not rushing through everything, game changer for her. And I will tell you, this is big. If you are constantly, once again, especially as a woman, if you are rushing through everything and you are just, how quickly can I get through tasks and get through all these things? We're going to have some trouble getting you a bigger stress bucket and taking some things out of your stress bucket. Slowing down, and that doesn't mean being slow with everything, but giving yourself an extra 5 minutes to drive to the grocery store, to do the dishes, to fold the laundry. For me, I'll tell you, listening to music while I wash dishes or cook or fold laundry or do some cleaning around the house. One, I try not to do everything all in one day because that feels like a lot. We don't have a huge space to do all of that. And I try not to do all of it all at once, or Jonathan and I will kind of tag team and we'll kind of divide and conquer with these things. But I take my time. I take my time. I'm, listening to music. Sometimes we'll listen to music together if we're doing this together, and I'm singing, uh, and maybe doing like, some little dancing or some wiggles with it, and just enjoying, maybe not a task I actually enjoy, but trying to bring some enjoyment to the task. And I will tell you, it goes a long way. And so once again, when we think about health and healing, it's not about being perfect. There is no perfect. And I will tell you, this is a big thing that we see, especially in our more complex, our more chronically kind of ill clients that we work with, is the perfect timing of supplements, the perfect nutrition, the perfect, I should be doing a castor oil pack for 3 hours a day, but what time should I be doing it? Exactly how? Stop. Stop trying to be perfect. None of us are perfect. You're never going to be perfect. We're never going to show up perfectly. And we shouldn't have these chronic issues all the time. But also, let's say stress is a little bit higher. Maybe you've got a big project that you're working on, so you've been working extra. And so for 1 month, maybe you had a little extra PMS. Maybe you had a little bit of a headache at the start of your period. Maybe your period was a little bit different than it normally is. Maybe some brown blood to start or to end with it. And then you track the next month, but it goes back to being okay. And so, it's just that 1 month, but you want to know why? Why was it? What was going on? Why am I doing this? What do I need to start? Calm down. Take the pressure off of yourself. That little bit of increase in stress will impact digestion and hormones, are the two things that stress will impact right away. And so one of the things that we provide at the beginning of our work with all of our clients, we have a very comprehensive resource manual, is what we call it. It's like over 80 pages now. We've been building it over the years, and it goes over a lot of the work that we're going to do, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. Not everything applies to everyone, and it's a good generalized kind of resource that we refer a lot to. We also do this at the end, and we have an end of program resource manual. And some of the big things that we talk about for long-term maintenance is what happens when inevitably stress is high and you go through a stressful period of time. And big things we talk about drainage pathway support work. Stress is high, your body has to filter out that excess cortisol, those excess stress hormones. So how do we support our bodies? Well, let's bump up our drainage pathway support work. And that can look like lifestyle things for some people if they prefer supplements. Cool. We've got tons of recommendations of different things that they can do to help and support their body. We're going to talk about digestion, maybe adding in some additional stomach acid support or digestive enzyme support just during that period of time to help and support, because we also know that stress goes up, your stomach acid levels and overall digestive enzyme production is going to drop. And that's going to happen pretty darn quickly. So if we can support that, that can go a super long way. If you start to experience constipation, you definitely want to support that right away because it's one of the big ways our body's getting toxins and things that, once again, our body doesn't want or need out of our body. So it's a huge way that our body helps and supports. And once again, we have a variety of tools that are lifestyle things, that can be supplements, that can be, we've got teas, we've got all kinds of things that we can share within that. And then I'll tell you the biggest thing, and this was the biggest thing for me. I did so many protocols. I did from supplements, nutritional things, like lifestyle. I mean, I did so many things, and I got to a point where I was feeling pretty darn good. I would say I was feeling probably close to like 75 to 80% most of the time, like 80 to 90% of the time, which I was really good with. Like, I was really happy with this. I was having bowel movements like pretty much every day. Every once in a while, I would need some additional support. I was rarely getting bloated and almost never had gas issues again. And the one thing that took me to kind of the next level of like feeling really good, I'm talking like 90 to 95%, 90+% of the time, was the nervous system work and continued emotional processing, continued trauma processing, trauma healing, and different things like that. And that is one of the biggest things that we recommend long term because, once again, it's going to take things out of your bucket and also going to help you get a bigger bucket, which just gives you more wiggle room for your overall health and wellness. I'll tell you the other thing here is like, I've never seen perfect blood work. I never. For myself, for clients, like I've never seen perfect everything be in absolute optimal ranges. Things change. And so this is why running blood work, even just some basic blood work, every 6 to 12 months is a great idea because that shows, sometimes I'll change the multivitamin I'm on. That's the one supplement we do typically recommend from a long-term perspective. Is a good multivitamin. It's hard to get all the nutrients you need from food, even with a perfect diet. So multivitamins tends to be a pretty good idea. For someone who doesn't have a gallbladder, they need to be on gallbladder and bile support for the rest of their lives. And there's a handful of options there, of different options to really look at. But that absolutely needs to be the case. And then for me, I things will shift. Sometimes I need to get rid of. In my last labs, I still had a little bit of excess iron saturation. So I donated blood again. Do I need to do that? Do I need to support iron levels just a little bit? Oftentimes my zinc and copper levels can still be a little wonky here and there. They're not terrible. They're a whole lot better than they used to be. And occasionally I need some additional support. So I may take some additional zinc and copper support. I may need additional B vitamin support, in which case I'll do that. I may notice, if I'm not feeling a little under the weather, maybe my viral numbers are just borderline. So I'm going to add in just some immune modulating work temporarily. So it's like looking at all of these things, our body's giving us constant feedback. And if we can listen to that feedback, both from how we're physically feeling, but also from semi-regular labs, even just once a year, like, man, this can go a really long way. And this can keep you in a really, really good spot long term. And so is there ever a feeling of 100% of the time? Realistically, no, I've never seen that. Just being very honest here, I've never seen that. But once again, feeling 90%, 80 to 90% of the time, a minimum 90%, feeling a minimum 90%, 80 minimum 80 to 90% of the time, man, that's amazing. And that's where I really think things should land. And for us in our practice, that is health. That is, I don't like the word healed because it feels very definitive in the end, but that is healing and being in a really good place from a healing perspective. Once again, I don't know if there is ever feeling 100% of the time. Our body's constantly changing and our nutrition we shouldn't be eating the same things every day, all day, every day. I mean, we're missing nutrients from that perspective too. So it's having this wiggle room within our lives to eat some ice cream here and there, to go to, I don't know if I'd ever recommend McDonald's or some of these other places, but going out to eat and not eating in your quote unquote normal. Do it. You should be able to do it. Might you feel a little bit of bloating or a little bit of acid reflux? Yeah. If it's not good quality food, it may happen for a day or two, but then it should go away and you should have that wiggle room. Should you have like intensely painful bloating? No. And yeah, you might feel some bloating for sure. For me, I've gotten to the point where I can have some dairy and I can feel okay. I still cannot have gluten. Gluten does not make me feel good ever. So I don't have gluten ever. But dairy is something that I couldn't have for most of my life, like almost no dairy. Now I've got quite a bit of wiggle room when it comes to dairy. I still eat non-dairy ice cream. I'm not drinking milk. I don't do the best even with like an A2 kind of milk or raw milk. I still a little iffy, but I can do most cheeses. I like a goat or sheep's milk based dairy product I do much better with than a cow's milk, straight cow's milk kind of based dairy. Quality matters a lot, and that's a huge improvement for me, which I take as a huge win. So just wanted to share some thoughts on this because I do think that most people shouldn't be on a ton of supplements long term. They shouldn't have to do all of these crazy biohacking things. And look, if you've gotten to the place where you're in a pretty good spot and you want to dive into the biohacking space and you've got the financial resources and space to do that, go for it. These things are super cool. Now, for the average person who has some discretionary income, but not a lot, who, sees a vibration plate and thinks like that is going to solve all of your issues, the reality is like it's not. Helping with drainage, for sure, it can help with that. Is it going to build your muscle mass? Meh. Maybe the tiniest bit, but it's not going to be a big difference. If you got osteoporosis or osteopenia, it's not going to completely reverse it. And if someone told you this is all you need, they're lying to you. And so the goal within our practice is to be very clear and upfront and set some realistic expectations when it comes to health and healing. And we've seen miraculous healing. We've seen people, bedridden, couldn't hold even a part-time job, be able to fully live their lives, to be able to get pregnant and carry a pregnancy full term, to be the kind of mom that they want, to be able to work a full-time job, to be able to sleep through the night, to be able to live their life to a really great capacity. And once again, 100% of the time, I don't think that's realistic because bodies are constantly changing. Our circumstances, our environment is constantly changing. Our stress levels are constantly changing. And the goal here is to have room and flexibility that we're not taken out by any of these things. So that is our take on the healing journey and what this really looks like. If you have questions, if you have thoughts on this, I would love to hear it. Send us an email, comment, send us a DM. We'd love to hear your thoughts, as always, on any or all of this kind of things. And if you want to hear me dive deeper into one aspect of what this should or can look like, please let us know. I'm happy to dive deeper into any particular area that I mentioned today. And hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please like, subscribe, follow. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really, really, really do mean the world to us. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.